Okay, so here's a basic diagram for what I've been explaining. You kind of think of, equator is this middle area, and say this area is around 30 degrees to 45 degrees latitude. We think, anything, between 0 and 30, either way, we think of that as the tropics. That's where that Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, they're at 30 degrees latitude. So we have that warm, less dense air, rising up like a hot air balloon, and that cooler, more dense air sinking. And this is dry air, right? This is wet air rising. And the interesting thing is, those you can imagine over water that create a lot of evaporation and clouds and so forth. But forests create their own clouds. Okay, so let me write that down. So you do too. So we have oceans, but also those forests. We talk about those rainforests or jungles. They're creating tons of water and moisture as the plants photosynthesize that add to clouds. So it's really kind of awesome. Trees create their own rain. Isn't that amazing? So if you remove the trees, remove the forest, you can remove the rain itself. So that's why we really have to be careful. We got to prevent deforestation. Or reduce, right? Because if we take out the forest, we're going to take out the rain. How are we going to grow those trees back? So that's why you got to be really careful with trees as a renewable resource. You got to manage that resource effectively. So many places around the world used to have forests that don't anymore because of this problem. A lot of parts of the Middle East are pretty much, desert, like around Syria, Israel, Jordan, because humans have been there for so long and they've harvested so many trees, and they're gone. They're not creating that moisture anymore, and that's reduced the amount of rain in those areas. Let's fill this side out too. All right, so I want you to look at these two. These two graphics. Look at the size of that kind of footprint for that ray of amount of solar rays. These are equivalent amounts. Equivalent amounts of energy from the sun. You see how that is way more spread out. Spread out.
D or D Van Devort.
Sorry about that. And we see at the equator, this is all concentrated. Concentrated sun rays. Okay. Yeah, I think that has a good, kind of gives you that good look at how that works with the sun rays. Now, hurricanes, they spin. Now, we don't have hurricanes here because our ocean water is generally too cold. But with the change in our climate, there could be maybe 20 years from now, or maybe even sooner, if we have a strange anomaly. And we have had these before. There were a couple summers ago while I was teaching summer school. We did have a really strange kind of monsoon rain. I think we had something similar like a week or two ago. We did have some kind of intense rainfall here. If you guys remember, we had this really monsoon type rain. So it does happen once in a while. What'll happen normally, Mexico might get hit with a hurricane, but we'll get like the tail end remnants of the water. But there is a spin to the hurricane and tornadoes, and that is due to the Coriolis effect coming from Earth's rotation. And if you look, moving south in the northern hemisphere, while it's moving, the Earth is spinning, and that gives the impression from the ground that it's moving to the right. And this happens, same thing, northern hemisphere. If you're, moving north, you see this rightward deflection. And if you remember, if we look at, let me flip back to our diagram. Where is? I guess I'm going to hit it next. But from the initial diagram, we see that that deflection in how the wind patterns work. And then if you're in the southern hemisphere and you're moving towards the equator, you see this deflection to the left, both if you're moving in the northward direction or if you're moving in the southward direction. You could be in a plane and you're traveling straight, but according to what's happening on the ground underneath you, you're actually being deflected. So this has to be taken into account. Of course, any kind of air travel, it has to take into account, the movement of the Earth, and that different appearance of like the airplane can be traveling in a straight line, but if you're on the ground observing it, it's going to look like it's moving. And that's how we can see that deflection pattern creating these wind patterns that we talked about. The easterlies, called them polar easterlies sometimes. And we get the regular westerlies. Our trade winds, right in that kind of tropical zone. So what I want you to do on this slide, this last slide here, go ahead and draw the Earth and draw those major wind patterns so it gets a little more imprinted on your mind. All right, that's it for 4.5.